Did you know only 6% of people are getting enough fiber? That's why Quaker created Fiber February, a month-long movement to show your gut a little more love. It's like dry January, only easier and more delicious. Quaker has over 100 delicious options that are a good source of fiber. So go buy Quaker Oats today and join the Fiber February movement for a healthy gut.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and the San Francisco 49ers continue to make big moves this offseason and also be rumored to continue to be making big moves in the form of potentially signing Nick Bosa's brother Joey Bosa to a contract in week 2 of NFL free agency. And while most big names are off the market, Joey Bosa is still somehow floating around there waiting for the next team to sign with. We'll get into that, what he can bring to the San Francisco 49ers in 2026, and what are some pitfalls in his game as he enters into his age 31 season. We'll get into Nick Bosa restructuring his own contract, what that means for him going forward, and more importantly, what it means for the team. And the San Francisco 49ers also signed a brand new punter. Who saw that coming? I know I didn't, but we'll get into that today as well, and we'll also end today's show diving into a handful of free agent edge rushers the Niners could target to round out their defensive line or maybe even replace Bryce Huff with in the upcoming year. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. And with that said, let's dive into today's show as we enter into week number 2 of NFL free agency. And let's begin with Nick Bosa's contract, because the Niners did something we all expected to happen, and that is restructuring Nick Bosa's deal. They converted $21.4 million of Nick Bosa's salary into a signing bonus, clearing up $17.1 million in cap space in 2026. Although the numbers right now are kind of muddied because many of the deals they've reportedly got done aren't official yet, so the numbers you're seeing of $60 million and $40 million aren't inherently true, the Niners did add $17 million to their assumed cap right now, giving them more space to either sign more players or fit the guys they currently have under contract unofficially that they've done in free agency so far, fit those guys in their books with no harm done. But we all knew Nick Bosa was not going to play for a near $50 million or over $50 million cap hit this season. So this was pretty much taking care of business. That was all going to get done no matter what. But more importantly, while we can praise the Niners for doing a great job so far in free agency and talk about what they're doing this year, when you redo deals like this, you have to then look to the next couple seasons. And in 2027, Nick Bosa now has a $54.8 million cap hit. About the same, maybe a little more than it was this year, which lends to the question, or at least lends to the thought that Nick Bosa is going nowhere. For all the people out there saying trade Nick Bosa, cut Nick Bosa, move off Nick Bosa, 3 torn ACLs, he ain't worth a penny anymore. That conversation is done. Now, it was never likely. The odds are always slim, but we can table, if you're in that camp, the trade, cut, move off Nick Bosa stuff, because it's not going to happen. You don't move off guys making or gearing up for a $54.8 million cap hit in 2027. Now, what it does is it opens up the door for a potential restructure again, or, this is more likely, you may have to redo Nick Bosa's deal, and if he comes back healthy this year and plays really well, He could be in for an extension, or maybe there is something else that's done, but it does seem like there is going to be more money on Nick Bosa's book, whether it's 2027 or even further. That depends on his play and his health, obviously, but this does not open the door for further discussion of his future with him leaving. This opens the door of how long will Nick Bosa be a San Francisco 49er past the year 2027? Not will it end in 2026, but the bigger overarching question when you do this, knowing you're locking guys into new deals or you're pushing that cap can down the road further, is, was this the right move? Now, I think cutting his cap hit from about 50 to 17 is a big win for San Francisco. You had to make this deal to have the carryover cap, hopefully going into 2027, and give yourself some leeway once the extensions of Purdy and Kittle and Warner really pick up big in the next year or so. But when it comes to on-the-field play, was it worth it? Is it worth keeping a player like Nick Bosa around for the long haul? Now, we love Nick Bosa on the show. We think he's a darn good football player, former defensive player of the year. But, sometimes when guys get older, and in his case, when guys get injured 3 times with an ACL tear, it's really hard to come back from 1. And he came back from 2. Sometimes the 3rd time is the charm. So, looking at Nick Bosa's stats, courtesy of Al Sacco, one of the more famous ex-podcasters in the Niner fan base, he put these stats on X, and he said, Nick Bosa in 2021 through 2022, so this was his return from his initial, or really his second ACL tear in 2020. He played 33 games, so at 16 and 17 over that span. I'm not sure if this includes playoffs, so forgive me, but 33 games, 34 sacks, so over 1 sack a game, 40 tackles for losses, 80 quarterback hits, and 105 pressures. It's pretty good. Okay, but now you get into 2023. That is the last Super Bowl run this team had. Then it is 2024, then last season where he played 2 games before getting hurt against the Cardinals in Week 3. He played 34 games. He had 21 and a half sacks, 35 tackles for loss, 62 quarterback hits, and 85 pressures. A clear dip in production for a player like Nick Bosa. Now, I think we can all agree that Nick wasn't himself leading into the Super Bowl year. I believe that is his contract year. So Nick Bosa, in the context of the stats we have, where there is a big dip in production, entering 2023, Bosa wasn't there for training camp. He wasn't there for OTAs, and he got a brand new contract the Thursday prior to Week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Had a really slow first half, then had a really good ending to the year, so there is some context involved. And then 2024, he has maybe one of the worst defensive lines around him, albeit more durable. They just weren't very good. It was Leonard Floyd. It was, Malik Collins. It was Javon Hargrave getting hurt early in the season. Then you're relying on people like Kalia Davis and Yetur Gross-Matos and other guys like that is really weren't worth a damn, if we're being honest, that year. Then last year he plays 2 games before getting hurt. So there is some much needed context into why this is the case. Because Nick Bosa, to me, was still as productive in 2023 and 2024, knowing how bad the defense line around him was in 24 and the contractual status in 2023. And then, of course, 2025 was gearing up to be Nick Bosa's best year. He was phenomenal through 2 games. Had a game-winning clinching sack against the Seahawks where he pushes the right guard into Darnold, and he fumbles the football and they recover it. And it seemed like he was going to be on a defensive player of the year trajectory last year. Then he tears his ACL and everything else goes to hell. So we see the dip, and I get it in production. But when you play one more game, but you have, around 12 less sacks, you have 5 less tackles for losses, you have 18 less QB hits, and you have 20 less pressures despite playing the extra game. It's really important to add the context in, and it's why numbers can kind of lie. Like, people say numbers don't lie. Sometimes they do. Numbers can tell you a lot of the story, not the entire story. So in this regard, while yes, there is, do you want Nick Bosa around for a long time knowing there's injury history there and knowing he's getting older and not knowing what he'll be like once he returns, albeit there should be some promise with the way Nick takes care of his body, I don't think there's that much of a concern if he's healthy with a dip in production he's had, because the numbers are, in this case, lying to us. So I'm not saying he'll come back and be, defensive player of the year again, but you got to think from the optics, Bosa's walking into a situation where he himself bookends one side of the defensive line. If it's Michael and maybe his brother Joey or a draft pick on the other side, that's equally or equivalent to Bryce Huff's production in the first 2 games last year. That's the best edge group he's had in a while. And then you add Odigizua to the group, and that's the best 3-tech they've had in a long time next to Collins and West. So he's going to have the most help on the defensive line he's had since 2023, and maybe even since 2021. So I'm optimistic. There are some concerns, there always is, but in the longevity department, I'm not really that worried of what Nick Bosa can bring to the table, barring health, which is a common occurrence amongst the stars of this team. But when this went down, albeit it was expected, a much bigger conversation began, because it turned from, wow, Niners more cap space. Wow, what can they do? Who can they sign to? Oh, Joey Bosa is a free agent. Nick said, I'll take some more guaranteed money up front, give me a signing bonus instead, and I'll get my brother in here. And you started putting 2 and 2 together, and I think the entire NFL world for the first time in 3 years is like, this is going to happen. Now, there have been rumors that, and I've been on the train for the last 2 seasons saying, Joey to San Francisco. It makes too much sense. He's a free agent. The Chargers were going to cut him. They didn't cut him. They brought him back, and the Niners tried to make a trade for him, tried to sign him last year, and he goes to Buffalo. They've been trying for a long time to get Joey Bosa in San Francisco. They really have. And now this feels like the perfect storm where Nick's taken some cap maneuvering to fit Joey into the fray. The Niners do have a hole on the other side of Nick Bosa on the defensive line with Bryce Huff retiring. This, to me, just feels like a match made in heaven, at least when it comes to trying to connect the dots of who might sign next. Because, Joey Bosa, I'll ask you this. Do you want the San Francisco 49ers to sign Joey Bosa? And does he make sense for them this next year? Now, Joey's going into his age 31 season and his 11th NFL year, so a lot of tread on those tires, a lot of injuries on the lower half of his body, and you're heading towards the wrong side of 30. Now, I'm 29, so I'm getting around that number too, but, for an NFL player playing over a decade in the NFL, it's not really where you want to be. Now, it's not saying he can't be productive, but, there are some age issues, but that didn't stop Mike Evans from getting a big contract this offseason. That didn't stop, Nate Hobbs, who had an injury last year with the Packers, getting signed with San Francisco. And it hasn't really stopped them from doing the deals they've done so far in free agency. So what's to stop them now? But besides age, what can Joey Bosa bring to the table? Because I don't care how old you are. If you can be productive, get in here. I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40. I don't care if you're a 65-year-old grandfather. If you could play and help us win, get out there. So what can Joey Bosa do for the 49ers? Last year was the first time he started 15 games in a season since 2021. Now, he did play 14 games in 2024, but a lot of that was start and stops. Starts, get hurt, doesn't finish. Some of those were him returning from injury, not being able to start, and being limited in the capacity in which he played. So the 14 number, again, doesn't tell the entire story. However, the last 2 seasons has played upwards of 29 games. So there has been somewhat of a bump up in health for Joey Bosa. But what can he be? If he's healthy and you're on the field, what can he be for this Niners defense? And I think it's pretty clear he's no longer a 3-down player, which the Niners wouldn't need him to be, nor would they ask him to be in 2026. So then you turn that and say, can you still be an elite pass rusher? Because the Niners don't seem to want to block Mykel Williams' growth and development as the number 2 edge piece opposite Nick Bosa. That's fine. They want to have the versatility to move him inside on third downs and find the guy behind him or alongside him as kind of that, third down player. So could that be Joey Bosa? Could Joey Bosa slide in on, let's say, a second down where they want to move Mykel inside on 2nd and 15, on 2nd and 14? Is that possible? Well, according to Pro Football Focus, last year he had 54 pressures and 5 sacks in 2025. And in 2024, he had 39 pressures and 6 sacks. So that would tell you there is a very productive player in Joey Bosa, a capable edge rusher that can play on third downs, get to the quarterback, and move QBs out of the pocket and wreak some havoc on the opposing offenses. Yet there's a wide discrepancy in PFF and Pro Football Reference, where if the common fan goes to, PFR, which is the more common and normal place to get your NFL stats from, they're going to tell you a very different story, where last year, it says he has 54 pressures and 5 sacks on PFF, and the year prior, 39 pressures and 6 sacks. PFR says he had nowhere near that.
This episode is brought to you by Cologuard. Do you know what's really scary? Not screening for colon cancer when you turn 45. The Cologuard test is non-invasive, requires no special prep or time off work, and ships right to your door. In just 3 simple steps, Cologuard takes the scare out of colon cancer screening. If you're 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about the Cologuard test. Cologuard is available by prescription only. Learn more or request a prescription today at Cologuard.com/screen.
In fact, they say Joey Bosa hasn't had over 30 pressures and 6.5 sacks since 2021. So which is it? Now, you can go to the film, you can go to the tape, and that again is where numbers are confusing, because you have 2 different very viable sources that are telling us, the fans, us, the media members, the YouTubers, the podcasters, you included in this, 2 very different things. Because 54 pressures and not having over 30, that's a very, very different production output. So what's going on? So I went to the tape and I said, okay, what does he bring? What am I missing? What is PFF saying and what is PFR saying that I'm, can't get from just reading box scores? And from what I understood and what I saw, he still has good technique. Like, he's a high IQ player that can play on the edge, and that should be the case for a guy that's going into year 11. Like, the hands still work. He's still somebody that's smart. He can set an edge, and he has a good spin move still. Like, there's still the elite first-round draft pick of Joey Bosa in there somewhere. However, with the injury stuff, with the length of his career now creeping up towards the 10-year mark, or over it, excuse me, there is signs of him starting to lack power to translate from the lower body to the upper body. And now, does that mean he can't be, unproductive? No. That just means that the player that you think you were signing a half a decade ago or even 4 seasons ago isn't the guy. Now, maybe this is the right time, but that does show up in the run game, because the Niners had to have the hard, edge-shedding, powerful, don't get moved by a tackle player, and the majority of the time that's not Joey Bosa. Now, again, that can be Mykel Williams, and that's not a problem if that's the plan, which we don't know, because Raheem Morris is the defensive coordinator now, where if it was Solo, we can all say, yeah, that's the plan. And I'm going to assume that's the plan with Mykel and whoever they get or draft or sign to accompany him on the defensive line on third downs. But, it's not that Joey, and look, I'll put it in obvious terms. Joey Bosa is a 10-plus year player with a lot of injuries. That's what you can expect. Now, he's been healthier in recent seasons. that can either be a gift or a curse, because you can say, well, he's been healthy. Get him, sign him. And that continues. Or you can say, he's healthy. This is the perfect time to bring him in. Then he plays one practice and he gets hurt, and you're like, God, we shouldn't have signed him. This is what I was warning you about, right? Again, I have been on the Joey Bosa to San Francisco train for a long time, the last couple of seasons, because it felt right at those moments. And I do think, maybe they can do better in the draft at pick 27 overall. Maybe there is a chance where in round 2 they can find somebody who fits more of what Raheem Morris wants to do. But, Joey Bosa played in the 4-3 scheme. He didn't love it. Mind you, he didn't love playing for the Chargers and their defensive scheme when it was under, I'm forgetting his name, Brandon Staley. He didn't love that. He told Nick, good luck when he was with San Francisco in 2024. But it's also at a point where at the right price, if Joey Bosa is open to taking something around $8 million with incentives to make, 12, 15, okay, I wouldn't say no. I that's like a very reasonable price to go, okay, that makes sense. And it doesn't look like he has many suitors right now because he is aging. The Bills just signed Bradley Chubb. I'm not really sure where else he has ties. The Dolphins in Florida, they're rebuilding, so he doesn't make sense for them. The Jaguars have a whole young defensive unit they want to capitalize on, and they have some draft picks in place they want to use, maybe to get younger on defense or beef up their defensive line, and that wouldn't make sense for him either, albeit they're going to be competitive next year, based on what they did last year. And so when you look at that, the Niners feel like the only logical, true destination for Joey Bosa, candidate for Joey Bosa in free agency, which I don't know how long he wants to play for, but if this is maybe his last year, which it very well could be, he may say, okay, I've done the whole bounce around to, the Chargers for a long time. They redid my deal. I went to Buffalo for a year, played in the cold weather. Now this is me kind of winding out my career. The Niners have a pretty good chance to win a lot of games in 2026. They're going to be amongst the NFC West competitors, barring health, as most teams will be, Seattle and the Rams included in that. And I could very well see Joey being like, look, I don't need a lot of money, but I want it, so let me earn it, right? And so I could very well look at what Nick did, talking to Joey and say, hey, San Francisco, while you wanted to do this already, redo my deal. I'll take a big signing bonus, but make sure the recipient of that money, other than the guys you already signed, is my brother Joey. Get him a deal before things are over with. And it does feel like San Francisco is kind of, I don't know, it feels like they are going to make one more move. Now, they don't have many other holes to fill. Maybe that is, Joe Bitonio from the Browns. That doesn't seem likely. But it does seem like they're one move away from kind of putting a cap on their free agency, and that move really feels like Joey Bosa. Now, there were some people pointing out Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa's mom, Cheryl, putting on social media the two brothers in Niner jerseys. I wouldn't look too much into that because she does that every offseason, and she has the last 2 off seasons. Now, mindful, they've almost signed him the last 2 off seasons, so maybe that was the case. But it's either a third year of just kind of blue ball on the fan base, if that's the case, or it's like the final nail in the coffin of we're doing this for, to end Bosa's career, that being Joey. So I wouldn't look too much into Cheryl's Instagram posts. She's one to often root for her sons to play together. It saves on miles. It saves on money. It saves on having to buy 2 jerseys or get 2 jerseys and wear them throughout the year. The dad gets Joey and Nick, and they just go back and forth between Cheryl and John, and they just kind of recycle them throughout the process. But I don't know if it's just me, but it really feels like Joey Bosa is going to be a San Francisco 49er. The way they've gone about the offseason, signing Mike Evans, and kind of getting an older player involved into the fray, bringing back Dre Greenlaw for a 1-year deal. I could very well see Joey Bosa on a 1-year, $8 million deal with about, $6 million incentives, get you 14, get you, around 12 and see where that money's at. But what do you think down below? Do you think Joey Bosa is kind of a shoe-in to be one of the final Niners free agent signings this offseason? Because I think he's going to be, which I've said it the last 2 off seasons. Maybe I'm wrong for a third time too, but we'll see what San Francisco does. I have a good feeling about this. Now, I don't know, but Joey Bosa and a pick 53 edge rusher, that makes a lot of sense for the 49ers, unless they're going to do something crazy in the draft. But we have a lot to get to, so I'll tell you about today's sponsor, and it's one of the best in the biz. That is SeatGeek.com. Look, it's getting hot. Spring's rolling around, the flowers are blooming, the sundresses are out, the tank tops are starting to creep out of the closet. Dudes want to show off some muscles, and that means concerts. That means baseball. That means the NBA's winding down to the playoffs, and that means football is around the corner. If you want to attend any of those events, if you don't like sports, go see Harry Styles. He's touring across the country right now as we speak, or is going to be soon. That new album's pretty good. We all love the American Girl song, don't we, right? If you want to see him live or go watch a sporting event this year, go to SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. That is 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save $20 off your first purchase. And here's a secret. If you've already used it, change your email. Use a different credit card. They won't know. It's a discount every time if you have a different card every time. So, a little secret for you and a discount as things get more expensive across the globe. Gas is like $5 again. If I can save you $20, if I can save you 4 gallons of gas, wouldn't you want to capitalize on it? So go ahead and use that promo code and save yourself $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. And let's dive back into the show, because let's say San Francisco doesn't sign Joey Bosa. For as much as they might sign him, they may not sign him. And so that would leave the 49ers sitting there like, we're either going edge rusher at 27 or round 2, or you have to add another piece in free agency. And we are entering week 2 of NFL free agency, so the big names are kind of off the board. But I found 4 options that could make some sense, albeit they range from a potential depth guy, 5th, 6th, 4th edge rusher, to a potential 3rd down pass rushing specialist to accompany Micah Williams. But the names are not of high regard. They may be older players. However, I do think all 4 of these names can be productive in their own right and way based on how they're used by the 49ers. And let's kick things off with the most well-known name, because he was here 2 years ago. And I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't want to make this move, but Raheem Morris has yet to sign a Falcon this offseason. So maybe this is the one, that being Leonard Floyd. And I'm not going to get into him being here in 2024, then him going to the Falcons last year after being cut by the 49ers. I already did, so I'll do it again. But he doesn't really possess any of the high-level traits of a Bryce Huff. Like, there isn't a one-for-one swap in that case, right? He doesn't have the skill set to be the 3rd down pass rusher. He is a high-motor, high-effort player that doesn't really have the elite traits. He doesn't have the dip, the bendiness, the speed. He's more of kind of a, master of none type of guy, but a rather solid piece. Even with San Francisco, his numbers weren't terrible, but when you watched it, it was like, he doesn't make an impact. So if he's your 4th edge rusher, I don't mind it. But if the Niners want some stability in that room, let's say they can't sign Samuel Kawanu back off a tender and somebody else gives him a bigger deal, I can see Floyd being the replacement for Samo, albeit maybe a downgrade still in my opinion, because I really do like Samuel Kawanu. But as like a veteran 4th option, that could make sense. It could. Albeit not my pick, just one I think is kind of the safe. We know what he is. We know what he can do. He's been here 2 years ago in a much better defensive scheme now over Nick Sorensen, who was terrible. So Leonard Floyd is kind of the, fall back just in case you don't get anybody else on your target list. The next guy, though, is one that has been really good for a long time, but is now aging. I think his size is kind of getting to him. He's a smaller edge rusher, thinner guy, fits a very certain scheme. Now, that scheme is what a lot of Raheem Morris does. He likes those kind of blitzing linebackers on third down, and this guy does fit that mold. He's around 6'2". He had double-digit sacks for like 5 years in a row with the Cardinals and with was it the Jets for a year, in Philadelphia for a little bit of time. That being Haason Reddick. Now, he's past his prime. You can't ignore that. However, of the bunch I have in front of me, he's probably like the most productive one you can pick up. That would be that pure pass rushing specialist accompanying Michael Williams. Last year for the Buccaneers, 34 pressures, 3 sacks, but still an above average 11.4% pass rush win rate. So there still is something to like in that case. I think he does fit the defense better than what he would have under Saleh and Sorensen. So maybe there is a bump in production in that case. And I think he'd be playing on a more consistent defensive line with, Bosa, Odigizua, Michael, Collins than he would have in Tampa Bay last year, who kind of just had Vita Vea and that was it. So you may see a difference, an increase in some production with Reddick joining San Francisco. That'd be kind of the one I may take a chance on, but he's undersized, which could be natural leverage. However, he does feel more, in my opinion, as kind of like the veteran mercenary for hire that is put in on very rare occasions. But I think he has a little bit left in the tank, more than what we saw last year. I think he's only 2 years removed from a big contract with the Jets. So I think he was in the deal where it was Reddick for Bryce Huff swapping places, which didn't make sense from the Jets' point of view at all with Robert Saleh calling plays. But, I think Reddick could make a lot of sense for San Francisco. Moving along, though, to our next piece, somebody who I do think would have been better suited with the Robert Saleh 4-3 defense wide 9 stuff they ran last year, that being Derek Barnett, former 2017 first-round draft pick, was kind of headed towards being out of the league or being kind of a bust and has really turned his career around nicely with the Houston Texans. And arguably, besides Joey Bosa, might be one of the best pass rushers on the market still. When it comes to production, especially last 2 years, consecutive 5-sack seasons, and a really steady run defender, a 67.8 PFF run defense grade. So as a rotational piece, as somebody that's a bigger bodied guy that has some length to him, that maybe you just want to add another dimension to your defensive line behind Bosa and Michael, and Keon White will be involved in there. Maybe you want to draft somebody like Barnett can be a nice piece. And if you're going to lose Samo, that's the guy I think I'd bring in, but not sure what his market value is. I think Spotrac had it around $5.5 million, so I don't love that. But, for a 1-year deal, albeit it wouldn't fit your scheme amazingly.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Amongst the current kind of crop of leftovers, is how I'll word that, on the free agent market, I think Derek Barnett could do some damage in San Francisco. And finally, on my book I have here, Anfernee Jennings. And now look, when I read you the stats, you're going to say, Sterling, shut the F up. Like, get out of here. There's no reason to entertain this, to even discuss this. Like, what are we doing? You need to rethink how you do your show. And I won't blame you. But Jennings is a failed third-round draft pick. He never has found his footing in the NFL, and he's now searching for a new place to find his career and revitalize his image, which Does that not scream San Francisco 49er? Arden Key, Clelin Ferrell, to a certain extent, Chase Young, after he had a really good rookie season, got hurt and never put things back together, albeit it didn't work in San Francisco either, just more along those lines of guys that you bring in that were kind of nothing burgers or had all the hype in the world and didn't live up to it, and now come to San Francisco and Chris Kocurek and a new defensive scheme, better defense around them, better culture, kind of, with new coaching staffs and new coaches in place, something clicks. I think that could be Anfernee Jennings, albeit on a much lower level than, say, Barnett or Reddick or even Leonard Floyd in that case. But, he's 6'2", 255 pounds, fits that kind of linebacker-esque mold that Raheem Morris likes off the edge. And again, this feels like kind of the player that Chris Kocurek advocates for. They do like a bigger edge rusher. They do like their lankier and kind of taller guys, but with Raheem Morris in place, I do think there may be some convincing that can be done to say, hey, Kocurek, you complained about Robert Beal Jr., and the exact quote was him yelling at Beal Jr. saying, get your ass down, get your ass down. You got to get leverage, get your ass down. Well, guy's 6'2", that ass is naturally down. So it's not really a problem at times. But again, the track record's not very good. He's never had more than 2.5 sacks per year. And has seen his role diminish each and every season with New England the past couple of seasons. But I do think it's kind of a last-second pickup that can be a very bargain bin shopping, 1-year deal. You can be a camp body at worst in a new scheme. Let's see what fits. If it doesn't work out, there's no harm, right? But if it works out and in preseason something clicks, he's in a new Jersey scheme and new coaching staff, and it works out, then you found kind of the next diamond in the rough, if you will. And for a team that doesn't have any picks beyond round 4, these are guys you take chances on. The guys that are going to be kind of, castaways, failed picks elsewhere. These are guys that, you may kind of want to pluck the UDFA group away, which is fine. But sometimes there is a more beneficial route or a more productive route by grabbing guys that are failed elsewhere because they've been in the NFL for a couple of years. Their bodies are normally in better condition than they were coming out of college, or guys coming out of college this year. So the Niners should be in the realm of getting guys like Anfernee Jennings saying, you can be our kind of, slotted in 5th round draft pick of a guy that has something to give, but hasn't clicked just yet. And I would do that. Oh, on top of getting Joey Bosa anyways, get more guys in that room, because if you can be 6, 7, 8 guys deep on the defensive line as a whole, you can have 2 legit, 3 legit rotations of oh my God, anybody can get to the quarterback. That's what Seattle does. It's what the Eagles did a couple years ago against Kansas City. And it was just anybody can get you. Anybody. And so I would take a chance on Jennings, even if it wasn't, or even if they were to sign Floyd or Reddick or Bosa, even Barnett, just bring the guy in anyways. What is the harm in doing so? But let's move on to, I wouldn't say shocking, but kind of shocking. I expected this team to bring back punter Thomas Morstead during the offseason because they said we want to bring him back. Now, I don't know if he's going to retire. He did thank the team on social media, so it didn't seem like that was the case. Now, maybe he says it tomorrow on Monday or Tuesday. But San Francisco wasn't waiting around. Now, maybe it was a money thing. Maybe it was I want to see how I feel. Albeit you're a punter. I'm not sure how much that is, but he is 40. But they said, look, we're moving on. And although I'm shocked because it felt like they were going to bring back Weeks and Pinheiro and Morstead because they were good for them as a trio last year, a nice baseline trio. They said, nope, we're going to actually improve at punter, which good. I think we saw in the playoffs that Thomas Morstead really struggled against Philadelphia, and the leg was kind of losing some steam, albeit he didn't have a big one with him reaching the age of 40 last year. And so with age and with, the really bad punts in the playoffs, I think San Francisco said, okay, we got to find something else, find some youth that can, you can replace punters. For as volatile as kickers are, punters are equally as volatile. Like you can do a new punter a week and nobody would care, really, right? So one, it's also why you don't draft them in the 4th round, Kyle Shanahan. But removing that from the equation, they inked a new punter to the team and to a new deal, that being Corliss Waitman. And when this happened, I said, "Huh? Who? What? When? How? Why? Corliss Waitman? Who's that guy?" Now, I'm sure you don't look at punters because I don't watch punters. Because who watches punters? But diving into his stats, albeit it's not the most amazing upgrade, there's a clear improvement that they just got in the room, with I'm sure like no guaranteed money attached to it. Going with Thomas Morstead last year, his net average on punts, so the length of the punt on average, was 43.6 yards per punt. Now, that's a little misleading because a lot of the times San Francisco was getting closer to midfield, so the punts had to be short, where he flourished more in placement than leg strength. That said, he was 31st in average punt yards or yards per punt, whereas Waitman, albeit only a 2-yard improvement, was 25th. So a small sixth rankings of improvement from Morstead to Waitman. Back to Morstead, though. Last year, his net average on punts was 36.8 yards. That was dead last in football. So again, even with the midfield punts that were more common for him than others, he was dead last. You cannot punt the football 36 yards, 37 yards per time, per kick, and go, "We did a good job." It's bad. Whereas Waitman jumps up to the near halfway point in the NFL at 15th with a 41.7 net average on his punt. So you're jumping half the NFL and you're getting more towards the middle portion of the league in net yards per punt. So a big improvement there. And you'll see that more so as we go into the stats, because Morstead last year had 22 punts inside the 20. I thought he was pretty good there. That was 17th in the NFL. Waitman had 26 punts inside the 20, that being 10th in the league. So a big jump there, getting you in towards the top punters in football. Then on average return yards, which I'm not sure how this is graded or kind of weighted out, because this doesn't always mean it's the punter's fault. Now, punters can impact how returns happen, whether it's hang time, whether it's, where the ball is angled, how the ball rotates, all that is included. But last year, on a really good return special teams group for San Francisco, Morstead's punts averaged nearly 13 yards a return. That was 27th in football. So you think of having to play Rashid Shaheed twice a year, not ideal. I can't think of the Rams punt returner, but he's pretty good too. Not ideal. Whereas Waitman, only 7 yards on average per return last year. That was 8th in football. So I'm not going to give you this analytical deep dive into who is Corliss Waitman and, all this stuff. But one last trick up the sleeve, left-footed punter. They're going away from the right-footed punter. They're going lefty. So you'll see them sign right-footed punters during the year instead of the opposite way. So there is some new things coming into the fold for San Francisco, but it's pretty intriguing. I think it's interesting. You have to find ways to improve on the margins, where we've all kind of praised John Lynch and the 49ers for getting Mike Evans and getting Dre Greenlaw back and Odigizua and improving the receiver room and the linebacker core and the defensive line as a pass rusher, and getting a 3-tech in place now and kind of getting you some depth with retaining the guys that were here last year. But, improving as a punter and changing field position and making things harder for the Rams and Seahawks, who have very high-powered offenses. 7 yards is a big deal. In your returns, getting guys and getting teams pinned inside their own 20, that's a big deal when you're playing in a more heavy passing NFL nowadays. So I'm not going to sit up here and be like, oh my God, it's the move of the offseason. It changes everything. It doesn't. But, in a battle of yards, and if 1 yard can be a difference, then yeah. And if he sucks, you just go get the next practice squad punter and call it a day. Right? But that's all I have for you today. Tell me down below, do you want the 49ers to sign Joey Bosa? Is that the last move you think they make this offseason? And which one of the edge rushers do you want them to bring in? I listed Leonard Floyd, Haason Reddick, Derek Barnett, and Anfernee Jennings. Do you want one of those guys? You want two of those guys? How do you want San Francisco to spend the remaining cap space they currently have? And what do you think about Nick Bosa redoing his contract? Does it change his future for the team? Or are you saying, Sterling, they shouldn't have done that. They should have waited for this, see what his health was, then do it? Drop your thoughts down below. And more importantly here, do you love Corliss Waitman, this team's new punter? What do you make of that? Drop your thoughts down below. Enjoy the rest of the week. NFL free agency week number 2 is underway as we speak, entering into Monday. We'll see what else goes on. Maybe San Francisco makes another move. Maybe they don't. Time will tell. But as always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave us your 5-star audio podcast review, drop your comments down below. Follow us on social media at 49ers.access is the Instagram, 49ers_access is the X or Twitter, and use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Enjoy your week. I'll talk to you soon. And as always, stay faithful.